Shawn Michaels' well-documented boyhood dream came to an end at the Survivor Series in 1996. The story of HBK's title chase and title run had dominated WWF television during the majority of 96, and in a great example of how times were changing in the world of professional wrestling, Shawn was booed during his title defense at the Survivor Series against Sycho Sid. HBK dropped the title in Madison Square Garden as the New York audience cheered for the bad guy, but the plan was for Shawn to win the title back in his hometown at the 1997 Royal Rumble. It was really during this time period that we saw a more troubled side to HBK. Even on surface level, the most casual of wrestling fans could compare 1996 Shawn Michaels to 1997 Shawn Michaels, and immediately they would know that something wasn't quite right. Of course, Shawn was living fast, to put it in the most basic terms, and Shawn freely admits that he was not the easiest person to deal with. On TV, we got a lot of excuses, but none was more infamous than Shawn dropping the title because he, quote, lost his smile. This is the topic for today's video. When HBK's 1996 title run came to an end, Shawn himself felt that he'd done a poor job in raising WWF's viewership. Vince McMahon said that since WrestleMania XII, Shawn had put an immense amount of pressure on himself to carry the company during the early days of the Monday Night War. The NWO had formed right in the middle of Shawn's title run. Shawn's old buddies Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had become the talk of the wrestling world, and Shawn felt that it was on him to make the WWF more competitive. It's a silly, unnecessary, and rather selfish way of thinking, but that's pretty much who Shawn was during this time period. When Shawn dropped the belt at the Survivor Series, he really felt his run was a failure, but Vince wanted Shawn to rise to the top once again at the Royal Rumble, and it's pretty much universally believed that Shawn would then go into WrestleMania XIII to lose to Bret Hart. Bret certainly believed that this was the angle the WWF were going for, but we'll talk a bit more about this later on. At the 1997 Royal Rumble, Vince McMahon and the WWF went out of their way to tell fans that Shawn Michaels was sick. Apparently, Shawn had the flu. He wasn't himself, but Shawn was still going to perform in the Alamo Dome, and he was still going to challenge Sycho Sid for the WWF title. It was reported that Shawn spent the previous day locked in a bathroom, and on the day of the pay-per-view, Shawn slept most of the day in Vince McMahon's makeshift office. Whatever the case, you could tell that Shawn wasn't 100% at the Royal Rumble, but a below average Shawn Michaels is still a lot better than most of the WWF's main roster at the time, so the match still wasn't bad at all. HBK won the title back, and if we're to believe what's been reported, Shawn Michaels was scheduled to go into WrestleMania to face Bret Hart. Also at the Royal Rumble, the Hitman had eliminated Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Royal Rumble match, but Austin came back into the ring and he won the whole thing. Upset, Bret threatened to quit the World Wrestling Federation the following night on Raw, but WWF President Gorilla Monsoon booked a special Final Four match for In Your House, featuring the last four men in the Royal Rumble: Bret, Austin, Vader, and The Undertaker. Whoever won the Final Four would then go on to WrestleMania to face Shawn Michaels for the title. With everything that's been reported, we can only assume that Bret Hart would have won the Final Four, and this would have gave the Hitman his WrestleMania rematch with Michaels, only things didn't quite work out that way. 1 week after the Final Four match was announced, Shawn appeared on WWF Raw to cut an in-ring promo. Vince McMahon announced that on February 13th, during a special Thursday episode of Monday Night Raw, a rematch would take place. Shawn would defend the WWF Championship against Sycho Sid. Vince wanted to hear Shawn's thoughts on the Final Four match and his potential WrestleMania opponents. Shawn said that the title brings out the very best and the very worst in WWF superstars. A little foreshadowing there for sure. And Shawn says he'll do whatever he needs to do in order to hold on to the championship, no matter who he faces at WrestleMania. Vince then invited Bret Hart to the ring, and man, Bret Hart must have had a crystal ball, judging by the things that he said here. The Hitman told Shawn to do whatever he needed to do in order to hold on to the WWF Championship until WrestleMania. He even tells Shawn to make sure he doesn't get himself injured, because Bret wants Shawn at Mania. Bret says says he will win the Final Four, and as long as Shawn is healthy, the Bret Hart vs Shawn Michaels WrestleMania rematch would be set in stone. Bret doesn't want any excuses. He even says he'll watch Shawn's back during HBK's match with Sid on Raw to make sure Michaels makes it to the grandest stage of all. With the benefit of hindsight, you'd 100% believe that Bret knew Shawn was going to forfeit the title before WrestleMania, judging by this promo. Watch it back and I'm sure you'll agree. The other participants of the Final Four match make an appearance, and the segment comes to an end with Steve Austin calling everyone a bunch of crybabies. Raw was taped the following week from the Toronto Skydome, airing on the 3rd of February 97. Shawn worked a dark match on this show. He defeated Bret Hart and Sycho Sid in a triple threat match, but during the television broadcast, HBK had another in-ring promo with Vince McMahon. The audience were split here, being in Canada. There were fans in attendance who took great pleasure in booing the WWF Champion. Shawn once again said that the championship brings out the worst in people. Shawn says that if being bad is what it takes, then HBK will be the worst person the WWF has ever seen. Vince asked Shawn to address Bret Hart, and Shawn said that Bret can call himself the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, but right now, at that very moment, Bret couldn't call himself the champion. The Hitman came to the ring, and what we got here was a great piece of WWF television that I would say has become pretty much forgotten. The Hitman says that he's tried over and over again to like Shawn Michaels, but HBK makes it impossible for Bret to do so. Bret once again pulls out his crystal ball when he says that Shawn said it best himself. HBK is a degenerate. Shawn can be heard saying, "Sue me," as Bret goes on to call Shawn a punk and a jackass. And as Shawn began to interrupt Bret, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Sycho Sid hit the ring. When we came back from commercial break, Shawn and Bret were still in the ring. The men had a stare down with the WWF Championship at their feet, and when Shawn tries to lift the belt, Bret puts his foot on the title. Bret then picks up the gold, and we think Bret is being a good sportsman by handing the championship back to Michaels, but Bret instead drops the belt to the floor before flipping off the Heartbreak Kid. If the WrestleMania XIII match would have took place, we would have seen this piece of footage played quite a lot during the build-up, but it wasn't meant to be. A quick side note too, the dark match between Shawn, Bret and Sid was later released on DVD. People seem to think that this is the match where Shawn allegedly hurt his knee, leading to Shawn forfeiting the title, but this is incorrect. Shawn had a further 6 matches after this triple threat bout. Now, to be fair, all of these matches were triple threat or tag team matches, which does suggest that Shawn was working hurt, but Shawn was still working matches. If the World Wrestling Federation believed that their champion was severely injured before WrestleMania, then the champion would be put on the bench and given some time to heal. For example, Shawn Michaels before WrestleMania in 1998. Add in the fact that Shawn runs and dances after the triple threat match, and you just naturally come to the conclusion that Shawn was absolutely fine here in Toronto. The special Thursday episode of Raw on the 13th of February, appropriately named Thursday Raw Thursday, kicked off with a huge announcement that would change the course of the World Wrestling Federation. Shawn Michaels was going to forfeit the WWF Championship. With Gorilla Monsoon and Vince McMahon in the ring, Shawn came out holding the belt as Jim Ross told us that Shawn's doctor had recommended reconstructive surgery on the knee. Shawn's knee was apparently so bad that he was unable to perform in the ring, and Shawn would be forced into surrendering the championship. The Final Four bout that was once a WrestleMania #1 contendership match was now going to be a title match. Shawn Michaels got in the ring and he said, "Well, it seems like we've done this before. This time, unfortunately for me, it's much more serious than what it was last time. I've never had a doctor look at me in the face and say that I may never wrestle again. I was told that the other day. It's not something I believe, but it's something I have to deal with. Time has taken its toll on my body. I come here and people cheer Sid's name and they chant Bret's name. One thing is for sure, you're going to have all that in the future, and that's what I want for the World Wrestling Federation fans. Despite what people may think of me, what I've always wanted for all these people was for them to have a good time and to enjoy themselves. I've always tried to be the one to provide it." I know right now we're in a time when toughness is real big in the World Wrestling Federation, but all I've got for you right now is a lot of sorrow, a lot of tears, and a lot of emotion. I don't have any toughness for anybody, so here's your belt. I'm going to go back home and see what's left for me, whether it be in this ring or out this ring. I know over the last several months I've lost a lot of things, and one of them has been my smile. I know it doesn't mean a whole lot to everyone else, but it means a lot to me. So I have to go back and fix myself and take care of myself. I have to go back and find my smile, because somewhere along the line I lost it. I don't care if it's unpopular, I don't care if people want to make fun of me because I'm an emotional guy. This is all I ever wanted to do, and over the last year I got to do it. Whether you like me or not, last year was the most wonderful year in my life, and if I never get to do it again, it's okay, because I got to live one full year as being the number one guy in this business. It was the single greatest year in my life. I have you to thank, I have everybody here to thank. It means a lot to me, and I'm going home now. With tears flowing down his face, Shawn Michaels left the ring and the World Wrestling Federation Championship was vacated. To say this was controversial would be an understatement. Shawn Michaels famously losing his smile would become the subject of ridicule for years, and people believe that Shawn Michaels used this knee injury as an excuse to dodge Bret Hart at WrestleMania XIII. Many believe that Shawn's emotional promo on Raw Thursday was a complete fabrication, and Michaels was just simply refusing to lose to Bret. In the eyes of many fans, Shawn would rather cry in the ring and give up the championship than lose to the Hitman on pay-per-view. But let's take a look at why people would believe this. First, and maybe most importantly, Shawn had forfeited and vacated championships before. In September of 1993, Shawn was stripped of the Intercontinental title, allegedly due to his failure to defend the title. In reality, Shawn failed a wellness test. In 1994, he vacated the WWF Tag Team titles due to a storyline breakup with Diesel. In September of 95, he and Diesel were stripped of the tag titles, and then the following month, he forfeited the IC title after getting beat up outside a bar in Syracuse. There's also Shawn losing his smile right here, that's another forfeit. And later in the year, his tag team belt was taken away when his future with the company became unclear after a backstage fight with Bret Hart. Shawn's history with vacating championships is absolutely legendary. There is enough evidence here to suggest that Shawn doesn't like losing championship belts inside the ring. It can't be denied, nor can it really be defended. Some may say that everyone deserves the benefit of doubt every once in a while, but 6 occasions of the same thing happening goes a bit beyond the boy who cried wolf. WWF producer Bruce Pritchard said that Bret Hart was livid after Shawn's promo. Not only was Bret annoyed at Shawn dropping the belt, but even the office felt that the whole "I lost my smile" thing just confused casual viewers. Shawn saying that he lost his smile wasn't scripted, and Vince McMahon didn't know he was going to say this prior to the in-ring promo. Pritchard also said that he himself believed Shawn had a bad knee, but he also could have worked with Sid and eventually Bret Hart if that was the original plan. From all accounts, there didn't seem to be many people who were sympathetic towards Shawn backstage. There were more skeptics than anything else, and this was due to Shawn's history of forfeiting and vacating championships. Pritchard also said that there were discussions around Shawn dropping the belt to Sid on Raw Thursday. Sid was reportedly going to win the title in a quick match because Shawn was unable to have a 20-minute bout due to how hurt he was. So Shawn was being booked here to apparently lose to Sid and Bret within a short time frame, and this is why many believe Shawn decided to forfeit the title instead. The next obvious question then that would clear some of this up would be, did Shawn get the knee surgery? And yes, he did. Don't be fooled into thinking Shawn wasn't actually hurt here, he was, but as explained earlier, Shawn was working with the injury for quite some time, albeit in tag team matches and triple threat matches. There's also the whole thing about wrestlers working big shows regardless if they're hurt or not, and whether you think this is the right or wrong thing to do is completely up to you, but there was a sort of unwritten rule where a wrestler would be expected to work hurt if their name was on the marquee, get the match in the ring and deal with the injury after drawing the crowd, that kind of thing. Even if Shawn was legitimately hurt, many would simply say that Shawn should have worked WrestleMania anyway. In the weird world of professional wrestling, this would be considered the right thing to do. Man up and get in the ring. A theory that's been thrown out there, and the one I'd probably lean towards the most, is that Shawn was indeed hurt. He did go to his doctor and he was told he needed surgery, but Shawn maybe saw this as an opportunity rather than a problem. It was the perfect excuse. It avoided the proposed loss to Sid in the WrestleMania rematch with Bret. The thing is though, I can't tell you what happened, and neither can anyone else with a YouTube channel. WWF producers at the time are still not 100% on the legitimacy of Shawn's knee injury. There's one man who can give you the answers, and that's Shawn Michaels. Shawn says that it was very much legitimate, so that's what we've got to work with. One thing is for sure though, Shawn was going through more than just these alleged knee problems. The guy had problems with addiction. It's no secret that he was becoming extremely difficult to work with. And in early 1997, I firmly believe that we were seeing the results of all that pressure HBK put on himself in 1996, along with the self-medication of course. It's almost like Shawn Michaels was breaking down on TV as the weeks went on. Bret Hart is pretty adamant that Shawn faked the injury to get out of WrestleMania XIII. What's interesting though is that Bret revealed details about the planned WrestleMania XIII match. Bret shared his ideas for how he wanted the match to play out. It's quite different, but it is also very intriguing. Bret said, "It would have basically been a duplicate of the Iron Man match, but we wouldn't go the full hour again. I wanted to do a thing where Shawn was stomping his foot, getting ready to give me the big kick. Shawn goes to give me the kick as I stagger over to him, just like the Iron Man match, except this time I would take Shawn's foot, catch it in the air, get him to the ground and put some kind of shoot hold on his foot, and break his foot in the middle of the ring. I wanted Shawn to tap out like they do in UFC, where it's like when they break somebody's arm, they tap out pretty fast and everyone jumps in and it's a very serious kind of thing. I wanted to break Shawn's foot and they would hand me the belt and I would have gone over and stood over the top of him and go, F you." Keep in mind that I don't think Bret is saying he wanted to shoot on Shawn Michaels in the WrestleMania main event. That would be silly. But Bret wanted to do something that looked a little more legitimate, and by the sounds of things, Bret would turn heel also at WrestleMania. Bret would turn into a bad guy at Mania 13, but of course it wasn't during a match with Shawn Michaels. Bret would go on to work with Steve Austin in an iconic submission match, while the WWF title was moved over to the Undertaker vs Sycho Sid match. HBK showed up at WrestleMania 2, but he stayed at the commentary table. Bret made sure to call Shawn out for his so-called injury, and Shawn just laughed at Bret. It also didn't help when Shawn came out for interviews and he performed backflips from the top turnbuckle. In the end, the way Shawn tells it, HBK's personal doctor who diagnosed the knee injury apparently had no experience in sports medicine, and he told Shawn that he would never wrestle again. After a second opinion and also after surgery, Shawn apparently found out that the knee injury was much more minor than originally stated. There could be some truth to this. After all, Shawn would continue to have knee problems during his second WWF run, and he again had surgery. So I do need to stress here that I really do believe Shawn had issues with his knee during early 1997. Shawn returned to the ring 3 months after forfeiting the belt, and again he was put in tag team matches only, although giving Shawn the tag team title along with Steve Austin was probably a mistake. Shawn didn't have a singles match until June of 1997, working against Stone Cold at the King of the Ring. If Shawn didn't drop the title on Thursday Raw Thursday, we wouldn't have gotten the submission match between Bret Hart and Steve Austin. If we didn't have that submission match, then Steve Austin's journey to the WWF title would have been very different. You have to ask yourself if you'd prefer another HBK vs Bret Hart WrestleMania match or the classic submission match between Hart and Austin, and I know that I would choose the submission match. We would get to see Shawn vs Bret again eventually, but that's a story for another time. Shawn losing his smile is definitely some meme-worthy material, and even the most die-hard HBK fans have to admit that it wasn't a good look for Shawn at all, but in a strange way, it all probably worked out for the best. Shawn's issues would continue throughout 1997, and I've covered so much of HBK's career on this channel already that you know I'll come back to Shawn in the future. Thanks for watching and take care.